We're doing the part that says all the shul, all the yeshivas will be transported to Eretz Yisrael. We went over the page in the Gemara, which is page 1. And now we're going to do a sikha, part of a sikha, that's related to this. And this sikha was given out as a separate pamphlet that was called Beis Rabbeinu Shebababel, the house of our Rebbe in Babylon. So these words, Beis Rabbeinu Shebababel, this is alluding to what's in the Gemara. Let's go back to what we did yesterday, and that is the Gemara says that there's a pasuk, there's a verse in Yecheskel where it says, Hashem says, I gave you a miniature temple in exile. So even though the Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim was destroyed, we were no longer living there, we were exiled to Babylon. But Hashem says, in Babylon, I gave you a miniature temple. And remember we said, the Gemara raises the question, what does it mean by a miniature temple? Either there's a temple or there is no temple. The Gemara answers, miniature Beis Hamikdash means, these are the words of Rabbi Yitzchak. It means every single shul and every single yeshiva in Babel is considered a miniature Beis Hamikdash.
We're going to know all the convention over?
What?
We're going to study now all the...
No, just one specific part, yeah. And the reason for that is because what is the Beis Hamikdash? That's a place where Hashem's presence is found in a more concentrated way. And not only that, but that's the place that generates spiritual and godly light and awareness and consciousness to the whole world. So on a smaller scale, every shul, every yeshiva, in every country, in every city around the world, wherever it is, that is the source of spiritual awareness and consciousness and generates spiritual light to that community where the shul is or the yeshiva is. So it's called a miniature. That was one opinion. Then the Gemara brings another opinion. This was the opinion of Rabbi Lazar, and he said it's actually referring to one specific shul. And that shul, the Hebrew term is Beis Rabbeinu Shebababel, is the house of our Rebbe in Babel. So we learned yesterday, what does that mean? It means that it actually is referring to the shul which belongs to the leader of Jewry at that time, which was Rav, that was his name. And he had a shul in Babel. His shul is a miniature Beis Hamikdash. And what did we explain? And the Rebbe says we can reconcile both opinions. They're not contradicting. They don't exclude one or the other, but they actually come together. And that is that all yeshivas and all shuls are considered a miniature Beis Hamikdash. But one is more the sort of the primary one. To use an analogy, we have electricity in this entire building. There are 3 floors, there's a basement, and every room in the building has electricity. Where's the main source of electricity for the whole building? How would you know? But in most cases, in most buildings, the main source is in the same area. Where is that? Usually it's in the basement. And there's a power line from the street into the building, goes to the basement. And from there, it goes to the first floor, the second floor, the third floor. On each floor, it goes to each room, and that's how you have electricity. So that's the main source of electricity, right? On the other hand, there's another place that's the main source of all the electricity for Brooklyn. Oh, so there's 2 mains. One is the main source for this building, and the one is a main source of power for the whole entire Brooklyn. But really, in New York City, there's more than Brooklyn. There's Brooklyn, there's New York, Manhattan, there's Queens, there's Staten Island. So there's a main source that sends electrical power to the entire New York. That's also a main. And then there's a main source that sends to more than one state, like Niagara Falls. It sends electricity to America, it sends electricity to Canada. So basically, there's a main on a local level, there's a main on a city level, on a state level, and more. So same thing spiritually. The main Beis Hamikdash was always the Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim. But imagine when they had a Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim, there were also yeshivas and there were shuls all over the country. But they were also miniature Beis Hamikdash, but the main source where Hashem's presence was sort of concentrated the most. And from there it spread to all the other shuls and all the other yeshivas was the Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim. And there was only one Beis Hamikdash. The same is with this. Yes, all the shuls have it, but there's one shul that's the main source where Hashem's presence is more concentrated, more revealed, and from there it spreads to all the other shuls. So that's what the Sikh is going to explain. So let's turn to the second page, where it says on top of the page the words, the primary abode. See that part in English? Proof that there are different levels of small temples may be brought from the beginning of the segment of the Talmud under discussion concerning the Shekhinah's place of residence amongst the Jewish people during the exile. And here's the Gemara we did yesterday. The Gemara says these are in the smaller words. Wherever they exiled, the Shekhinah resided with them. When they were exiled to Egypt, the Shekhinah resided in Egypt. When they were exiled to Babylon, the Shekhinah resided in Babylon. But in each place, where does the Shekhinah reside? Abaye said in the synagogue of Hutzel and the Shaf Vayashev. That's the name of a city, which is in Nahardar. These are cities in Babylon. This does not mean in both synagogues at once, but rather sometimes in one, sometimes in the other. This is all the words of Gemara. What does that mean? It means that when the leader of the generation was in this city, then the Shekhinah was in that city. When the leader of that generation was in a different city, perhaps after his passing, and then there was another leader in generation, and he davened in a different city, that shul in that city became the main Beis Hamikdash. That's why the Gemara says, not both at the same time. There was a time when it was here, and there was a time when it was there. Let's continue. The phrase, the Shekhinah resides with them, indicates that the Shekhinah is manifest in special places, such as the Mishkan, which is the tabernacle in the desert, or the Beis Hamikdash. In exile, the special places on which the Shekhinah resides are the synagogues and the study halls. As Rabbi Yitzchak states in the passage quoted, these synagogues and study halls are called small temples. The subsequent teaching then that the Shekhinah resides in the synagogue of Hutzel and Shavayeshev, if it's every shul and every yeshiva, why does it only point out these two places? They were unique even among the synagogues of Babel. Let's turn to the next page, page 3. This implies that in these two synagogues, the manifestation of the Shekhinah was superior to what it was in other synagogues and other study halls. The explanation is, this doesn't mean, when it says in the Gemara, it does not mean in both synagogues at the same time, but rather sometimes in one, sometimes in the other. This indicates that even between these two superior sanctuaries, there's only one special place that actually stands in the place of the Beis HaMikdash, and that hosts the primary indwelling and manifestation of the Shekhinah. The very name, Shav Yoshev, alludes to the fact, this is Aramaic, that is one place that hosts the primary manifestation of the Shekhinah. In fact, Shav Yashev means traveled and settled, indicating that the manifestation of the Shekhinah that used to exist only in the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, during the exile it traveled to a special place in Babylon, and that serves as a substitute for the Beis HaMikdash. So from this we understand that in addition to the small temple embodied in all synagogues and all study halls of Babel, there's one main small temple that stands in the stead of the great temple of Yerushalayim, and that's Beis Rabbeinu Shebabel. That's the place where the Beis HaMikdash traveled and settled there during the time of exile. Page 4. And maybe for a moment we'll just stop with the question, What does it mean that the Shekhinah, which is a God's presence, is more here than other places? And then we say, and there's one place where it's even more than all the shuls, and how can it be more? Either it's there or it's not there. What does it mean by more or less? More revealed. What does it mean more revealed? If you walk into a shul, you don't see Hashem. You walk into the Beis Hamikdash, you also didn't see Hashem. So what is more? In what way is one more or less than the other? You're on the right track. Keep going. More revealed is right, but what do you mean revealed? It's not revealed here. I don't see anything here, and I don't see anything there. Here, we're in a yeshiva now. Look around. I don't see the Shekhinah. You can't say it's revealed. And over there, you also don't see Shekhinah. You know, look around. You see walls, you see benches, you see the floor, you see the lights, the ceiling. Oh, so revealed doesn't mean I can see it with my eyes. It's more revealed means I can sense it more. I'm more conscious of it in that place than any other place of the world.
Why is there people that sense it more and people that sense it less?
So that difference has to do with the person. In other words, a more refined person will sense it more, and a less refined person will sense it less. Or sometimes it has to do with a certain gift that Hashem gives someone, that they should have more spiritual sensitivity. Like, for example, today, you can have a person that visits Israel, goes to the Kotel, and they're standing by the wall and they just break down, they're all emotional and they're crying. And they say to themselves, I promise from now on, I'm going to be more connected to my Jewish identity. I feel so connected. And another person walks over, takes a camera, takes pictures, puts it into their album, nothing changed. It's the same wall. There's no doubt that there's a presence of Hashem by that wall, but one person's affected more than the other. In fact, it could be two sisters from the same family, had the same upbringing, the same parents, the same education, and yet one is like exploding with excitement, and the other one is just like, okay, it's a wall, nice history. So this has to do with what's going on internally, and sometimes it could be that maybe the person did something that they don't even recognize that what they did was so unique and such a merit that sort of, because of that, Hashem gave them this extra sensitivity. Or sometimes it's a gift based on an ancestor, some other reason which we don't know. But generally speaking, we're not looking for hidden reasons. It depends a lot on how much more refined I am. If I'm wearing glasses and it's all smudged with, I just finished eating chocolate cake and it's all over my glasses, I don't see good. I have to clean it. If it's more clean, I see better. Spiritually, if I'm more refined, I can sense more the godliness. If I'm less refined, I sense it less. So when we say that there's one place where godliness is more revealed, it means it's so much more powerful there that it's more likely for everybody to be aroused and excited and sense Hashem's presence. And in a place where it's less revealed, you have to be more on a higher level to sense it. That's the difference. I just want to give an example, which is actually found in Chassidus, what it means when you talk about something which you can't really see, and yet we use the term more revealed or less revealed. So it gives an example of memory. Right now, we're studying the Sikha. There's other information in our heads that I'm not thinking about right now. Is it in my head or it's not in my head? I'm not thinking about it. I'm not even aware of it. And I'm asking myself a question. Does it exist there? Or when I think about it, that's when it comes to my head. Where is it? Oh, so it's in the subconscious. Okay. Now, there's certain things that when someone asks me, do you remember what happened, this and this? I say, no. Then say, think a little bit harder. Try to remember. Thinking. I spent about 5 minutes trying to get the picture. And I said, oh, now I remember. How come this took me 5 minutes and this took me 5 seconds? If it was in my head, I should remember right away. If it's not there, then even 5 minutes wouldn't help me. Sometimes you study something in a class. Some things you remember right away, even though you studied this in September. And some things you studied a week ago and you can't remember exactly what it was. If it's in my head, then it should be the same.
What touches you, what you can relate to.
Right, that could be the reason why, but at the end of the day, if it's there, I should be able to come to it right away. And if it's not there, thinking about it for 10 hours won't help me. If it's not in my memory. So what does that prove?
But it is in your memory.
And so what's the difference? That proves that there are layers of depth in the subconscious. So some things are deeper in the subconscious, and therefore I need to make more of an effort to bring it up to the surface. Some things are in the subconscious, but very close to the surface, and just a little bit of an effort, I could remember it right away. When we talk about people who have repressed emotions, something happened, who knows how many years ago, I don't even remember what exactly happened, but it's affecting me in a certain way. So that means it's there and I can't even remember what exactly is it. Someone has to help me try to remember what I went through, and that's why I'm feeling whatever it is that I'm feeling. So it means there are really infinite levels in the depth and layers of subconscious. So all of them, I don't see it. I'm not thinking about this right now. They're all in my subconscious, but yet one is closer to the surface and one is further. That's the definition of being more revealed or less revealed. Hashem's presence is, first of all, everywhere. It's even in the street. It's even in the middle of Manhattan, the holiest place in the world. In Manhattan, Hashem's presence is there, but it's much more concealed, which means it's less close, it's further from the surface. And if I'd want to become aware and conscious of his presence in a place like that, I'd have to make more of an effort to accomplish that because it's much more hidden there. In another place, it's more revealed. In a shul, in a yeshiva, where it's dedicated for godly service, it'll be more revealed. In the Beis HaMikdash, it will be the most revealed, meaning it's a place where it's more accessible, and I'll be more sensitive. I can feel it more, like you said before, not see it with my eyes, but I'll sense it more because it's closer to the surface. Now it says another point. Another essential point is that even after the Jewish people are redeemed, and all the yeshivas and all the shuls will be established in Eretz Yisrael, they'll be transported to Israel, like it says in the Gemara. Nevertheless, Beit Rabbeinu will continue to be unique. It was right now, this shul, where the leader of the generation is found, has an advantage. That's the primary place. But once Moshiach comes, and all the shuls go to Eretz Yisrael, and the primary place is no longer this or that, it's the Beis HaMikdash or in Yerushalayim, will there still be something unique about those shuls that used to be the shul of the leader of the generation? In Babylon, in Rome, in every single country in the world. There could have been, let's say, Rambam. Maimonides, he was the leader of his generation. He was in Egypt. Rashi was the leader of his generation. He was in France, different countries. Will these shuls still have something unique about them? And the answer is yes. How? Only during the time of the exile does the Shekhinah reside in the small temples in the lands where the Jewish people were exiled. But at the time of redemption, the manifestation of the Shekhinah will return to Jerusalem. It will not remain in exile. This is also a quote from Gemara. In other words, since the small temples will relocate to Israel, to the Beit HaMikdash, so the Shekhinah will no longer be present in the places where the small temples stood during the exile. It'll be in the new location in Israel. So this is why the Medrash says that the future Beit HaMikdash will be the size of today's Jerusalem. Can you imagine? The Beis HaMikdash will be the size of the entire city of Jerusalem. Why? Because all the places where synagogues and study halls once stood will be transported to Eretz Yisrael, and they'll be attached to the Beis HaMikdash of Yerushalayim. It'll become like an annex. So therefore, all these shuls will be still a place where the Shekhinah is more revealed. Of course, the Beis HaMikdash will be the most, but they'll still maintain that advantage and that quality that Hashem's presence is more revealed in them. And they'll actually be physically attached to the Beis HaMikdash. This is alluded to in the verse where it says, I will bring them to my holy mountain And I will gladden them in my house of prayer, for my house will be called a house of prayer for all people, all nations. The Marsha explains, my house of prayer is referring to the future Beis Hamikdash. And it's also called a house of prayer for all nations, while it is still in exile. That is, it exists in the form of the synagogue throughout the lands of the nations, which in the future will become attached to the Beis Hamikdash. So he says that all the shuls, those that were in the nations of the world, those that were in France and in Italy and in Russia and in Poland and the United States and in England and in Australia, all these shuls will be transported and they will be now relocated to Eretz Yisrael. In light of this explanation, small temples assume an even greater quality than previously explained. If all the places in exile where the synagogue stood will become appended to the Beis Hamikdash, so that means that now already in exile, the synagogue is like the very place of the future temple. Let me do one more piece. In other words, again, all the synagogues will be connected. It'll be like an annex. In other words, the Beis Hamikdash is going to have extra rooms. And those rooms will be thousands of them because it'll be all the shuls from that ever existed in exile. If it is reasonable to assume that a particular synagogue's point of attachment to the future Beis Hamikdash will depend on its spiritual level during exile. In other words, those synagogues that are greater than others, like the one in Hutzel, the one in Shavah Yashav in Babylon, which the Gemara says that's the main Beis Hamikdash, the main shul, that'll be closer to the Beis Hamikdash than the others. In other words, all these shuls that belong to the leaders of the generation, they'll be attached to the Beis Hamikdash itself. And all the other shuls will be attached to them. I just want to explain a little bit what that should do to our way of thinking. There's a story in Gemara where there was someone by the name of Rabbi Yochanan. He was considered the greatest leader of Jewry in his time. And he was talking about the future temple. And he said, in the future Beis Hamikdash, Hashem will have, I think he spoke about the windows, they'll be made of such diamonds that'll be the size of a window. One of the students was sitting and listening and sort of laughing in his own mind, thinking, a diamond the size of a window? You couldn't even find a diamond the size of an egg today. How are you going to find a diamond the size of a window? And basically, he was sort of doubting whether his Rebbe's words are really authentic. Then he went on a trip. And somehow he ended up on an island. It wasn't part of the plan, but he ended up on an island. Now, this student apparently wasn't a simple person either. On the island, he sees angels. And the angels are carrying huge, huge diamonds. And he said to them, what is this all about? So they said, we're preparing this for the Beis Hamikdash. Well, wow. Now I see that what my Rebbe said was really true. He went back, when he came home, went back to his Rebbe, and he said, you should continue teaching. Whatever you teach is really true and authentic, because I saw myself with my own eyes that the angels are carrying these. His Rebbe wasn't very happy with him, because basically he's saying, I didn't believe you. Only after I saw with my eyes, I believed you. And whatever they were, not positive results of that. But I'm asking a question, I'm asking myself and everyone else. Imagine if I'd be somewhere and I'd see something being prepared, and whoever is there, the angel will say, this is being prepared for the Beis Hamikdash. You would run home and say, I saw something today, which is actually in the future going to be one of the parts of the Beis Hamikdash. Very exciting. So what it's saying here is this room that we're in, and every shul has its advantages, but in addition to that, one day it'll be part of the Beis Hamikdash. And then there are those shuls that will be connected and be joined with the Beis Hamikdash itself, which are the shuls of the leader of the generation. So the Rebbe spoke about 770, which is the shul of the previous Rebbe. The Rebbe always referred to it, who was the leader of the generation. That means this very floor, these very walls that we're standing right next to them, in the future will be part of and very closely connected, attached physically to the Beis Hamikdash itself. And that brings out a much greater feeling of respect and awe when we're able to walk into such a Beis Hamikdash. Hence, Beis Rabbeinu. So again, the word Beis Rabbeinu is referring to that one temple of each generation will continue to possess an advantage over the other synagogues and study halls, even when Mashiach comes. That's the point of this Sikh of the Rebbe. So I have a few minutes, so we'll go to another chapter here, and that is the 10th song. What does that mean?
Is that why a lot of people visual?
That is probably the reason, yeah. In other words, if this is the Beis Hamikdash in the time of Geulah, so there's a certain manifestation of Shekhinah in this shul in a way more than other places. No one can take away the physical location where the Beis Hamikdash was standing, for sure. But in times of Geulah, things are more concealed, and in this Beis Hamikdash, things are more revealed.
But nowadays, like, what's the difference if you choose to spend time in Rabin and 770 or in other shops? Like, what does it mean with the Shekhinah?
So the fact that I'm davening in a place where the Shekhinah is more revealed, first of all, it should give me and make it easier for me to develop more. With davening has two parts. One part is saying the words, which is technical. But the other part is that I should have the right intention. It should help me develop a certain feeling of love for Hashem, appreciation of Hashem, and things like that. So if I'm in an environment that is more concentrated with godly light, I will become more aroused. Remember, we spoke about the reason why the Yidden had to travel to the Beis Hamikdash 3 times a year. And we said in the times that the Beis Hamikdash was standing, could you imagine how much time they spent just traveling? Because when they went for Pesach, they had to travel. And in those days, the mitzvah was to travel by foot. Even though they didn't have airplanes and cars, but they had horse and wagon. But the mitzvah was by foot. That's why it's called Shalosh Regolim. These Yom Tov are called, it's has to do with the legs. You have to travel by foot. So we said then that the Gemara says the furthest place from the temple in Eretz Yisrael was 2 weeks away. Now let's take this guy as an example. He lives 2 weeks away, picks himself up, spends 2 weeks traveling to the Beis Hamikdash for Pesach. Spends the Yom Tov in Yerushalayim, in the Beis Hamikdash, and then goes back home. It takes 2 weeks to get back home. Before he gets a chance to unpack, Shavuos is coming up. So it takes 2 weeks to travel again, then 2 weeks to travel back. So he already traveled how many weeks? Do the math. It's 5 and 4, 9 weeks. Because basically he spent a week there. Okay, a few months go by, you can breathe, and now comes Sukkot. Again, you travel for 2 weeks to the Beis Hamikdash, spend a week in the Beis Hamikdash for the Yom Tov, for the holiday, and then 2 weeks back, another 5 weeks. So you just spent 9 and 5, which is 14 weeks just traveling. That's 1 year. The next year, another 14 weeks. Over a period of 10 years, you already spent 140 weeks spending just traveling. And it's really shocking. Like, why is it so important that it's worth it to lose so much time? And especially for men who have a mitzvah, an obligation, that every free moment they should spend the time for Torah study. If that's the case, there's no doubt that you cannot concentrate on Torah study while you're traveling the same as you're sitting home by a table and you can really concentrate. So they're losing time from Torah study. Why do they have to go to the Beis Hamikdash? And the answer is, it's really in the Chumash, which says, go visit the Beis Hamikdash to see Hashem. We said before, you don't see Hashem. But it means by going to the Beis Hamikdash, that will allow me to develop, because Hashem's presence is so much more concentrated there, it allowed me to develop a stronger feeling of awareness and consciousness and feeling of love for Hashem, a feeling of awe for Hashem. And then the quality of my mitzvahs for the rest of the year will be of a much greater quality. It does something to me. And in fact, it does something to me, a lot of things that I'm not even aware. For example, a person is able to stand up to a certain test, a certain challenge in life. And they're strong and they're able to stand. They don't realize that came as a result because they went to the Beis Hamikdash, that strengthened and reinforced their godly soul. And that's why they had the power to overcome a certain test, not to do something which weren't supposed to do. So the same as with shul. When I go to shul and I daven, being in the presence of a shul, because it's a place where Hashem's presence is more concentrated. So my davening could be with more feeling, with more sensitivity, with more awareness and consciousness of Hashem. That's what I'm aware of. And in addition to that, subconsciously, I'm absorbing godly light, and that strengthens me. And I might not even realize it, that the reason why I was able to stand up to a test, or the reason why I was motivated to do something, or the reason why I succeeded in what I studied, is because of the godly light and energy that I absorbed when I was in this holy place, which is a shul, or in a shul, which is a special shul. So again, some people see it more openly, some people don't see it so openly, but even if I don't see it, it's absorbed and we never know how it will manifest. I once read an article that sometimes they do an MRI, and when they look at the MRI, this was specifically, I think, about the lungs, they told the patient that they can see from the MRI that he once had a very serious disease, and apparently it's gone. The person says, no recollection ever happened. He never went to any doctors. He was never told about anything. And they concluded that obviously it came and it went. And then they started analyzing. So tell us, what did you eat? What did you do? What was it that you did that without your knowledge, you were able to get rid of that disease? You must have done something which had an effect on it. What vitamins did you take and things like that? So there's sometimes even physically that something happens inside me, which is healing, and I'm not even aware that this is what was going on internally. And for sure this can happen spiritually. Like we said before, two people go to the kotel, and one gets very excited, and one just looks at it like a historic wall. There must be something inside going on that made this person excited, and this person, is just complacent. So there's a lot of things going on internally. Let's say you stop someone on the street. Would you like to light Shabbos candles? And they say, I'm not really up to it, but this week, the candles, I'll light the Shabbos candles. And they don't continue. But they don't realize lighting the Shabbos candles one time is something godly, is something spiritual. And it reinforces something in me. And you never know what else it could lead to in terms of strengthening a person's spiritual connection. So that's the difference. And every shul, I'm absorbing spirituality. But if it's a shul that the spirituality there is more concentrated, then it's more likely for me to absorb it, and more. I don't have to be on that high of a level to absorb it because it's more revealed there. That's what it means. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is the Gemara says that in the history of the Jewish people, there were 9 times rather, where they experienced such amazing miracles that they sang a song of praise to Hashem for the miracles. Now we all know the one that's in the Chumash, the one that we read when the sea split. But in addition to that, there's another 8 throughout history. When Moshiach comes, we're also going to be singing a special song of praise that Hashem took us out of the Golus. And that's going to be the 10th song. In fact, there's a few other things that the Gemara says there were 9 of them, and when Mashiach comes, will be the 10th. So I wanted to go through here, what are the 10 songs? So the first page you're looking at is a medrash, which gives a list of the 10 songs, but we'll go through it page by page. So, first of all, let's look at another source where this is the source that will be singing a 10th song. And that's the first page you turn to. This is part of the davening we're going to do tonight. Friday night, we always do this. It says on top of the page, Kabbalah Shabbos. And on the bottom it says, Shiru Hashem Shir Chadash. Sing to Hashem a new song. If you look at the next page, it's also underlined, but it says Shir Chadasha. Shir Chadash means a new song. Shir Chadash means a new song. What's the difference in grammar? Right. Shir Chadash is masculine. Shir Chadasha with a hey at the end is feminine. Does anyone remember what we spoke about? That it says that the song that is sang in the past, that would be feminine. The song that we'll sing in the future when Mashiach comes will be masculine. What was the difference? Do you remember?
I don't remember about the song, but we said that the final Geulah would be like Zachar.
Why? What is the connection? So let me remind, I think I spoke about it, maybe it was in the other class. The Gemara gives an interesting explanation, a medrash, that a connection is like this. What's going to be unique about this redemption is that there will be no other redemption following it. When the Jews went out of Egypt, it was an amazing, amazing celebration. They were finally out of exile. But then later, when they went to Israel, they were attacked by this nation, attacked by another nation, and then eventually came the time where the Babylonians destroyed the Beis Hamikdash and they went to exile to Babylon. And then there was the exile in the time of Purim. Then there was the exile in the time of Hanukkah. Then there was the exile through the Romans. So basically, there were redemptions and exiles. Redemptions, a little bit, it's compared to the moon, where the moon is bright and then it gets darker. That's our history. When Mashiach comes, the redemption will be a redemption that will be eternal. Never again will be any kind of suffering and exile. One of the things we'll be learning about in more depth is that redemption is compared to birth. And just like birth is an amazing, wonderful, beautiful gift that Hashem gives, a new baby comes into the world. But what happens before birth is when the mother goes through labor pain. And the same thing with the Jewish people. Before we had our birth the first time, which is Hashem gave the Torah, we went through labor pain, which was the time we spent in Egypt. And then when we went through other difficulties, it led to the building of the Beis Hamikdash. Then when the first one was destroyed, we were in exile, but that was a labor pain that led to the next one, which is the building of the second Beis Hamikdash. So in a sense, the suffering of Gullus isn't, God forbid, just punishment. It's a process of refinement, a process of cleansing that's preparing us for the next stage. And the same thing with, we're not explaining why Hashem made that a woman should suffer before the baby is born, but that's the process. That there's labor, pain, and then comes the birth. So the Medrash gives an interesting explanation and draws an interesting analogy that when the mother is going through labor and the baby is born, and she says, by Baruch Hashem, all that suffering is over, it's not totally over. You know why? She gave birth to a girl. When this girl grows up, she's going to have a baby. They'll start all over again.
Is this required?
What? Is this?
This week Parsha.
This week's Parsha. But that for the baby that's born is a male, then her labor stopped, and this baby will no longer have labor either, even when they grow up. Most males don't have labor. So basically, it's using the masculine term is implying that this will be a redemption that will be eternal. So number one, it's a song. Number two, it's masculine. And I guess next time we have this class, we'll go through the 10 songs throughout history. What more are they? We continue. Good Shabbos, everybody. Rabbi Dubov is here now. Take over. Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos.
It's number 51 on the list.
Good job.
Yeah.
And then they do that. It's still wet.